I'm just going to cut to the chase. Nick is one of the top 10 gas producers in the country. And to allow more time to speak, I'm going to be having him come up here to talk about protecting the future and soul of the region. But before that, I'll tell you an interesting fact about him. We hear a lot about people summiting Mount Everest or running marathons or scaling walls and buildings in Pittsburgh, or interesting facts about their culture. And sometimes people give DeIuliis a hard time for being cultured, and he said, well, I do watch Downton Abbey, the series avidly. So that is an interesting fact about Nick. So let's welcome Nick DeIuliis to the floor.
You sure know how to draw a crowd?
Well, I'll tell you. But I'm sort of, I guess I got the embarrassing things out of the way early with the Downton Abbey reference, so let me all hang out today. But I want to thank Ethan for that kind introduction. And I've been a fan of the Rotary Club since I was a young man. I had an uncle who owned a shoe store on the south side. He would let me tag along to your meetings from time to time. The mission of the Rotary, it's an important one. It's also a very impactful one, so kudos to all the people who participate in it. And it's really that mission that brings me to why I'm here today. I think a quote from General Jim Mattis summarizes the purpose that I'm trying to achieve today. He said, quote, "In any walk of life, you must fervently fight false narratives. If you don't, you'll fall victim to the false narrative becoming fact. You can't pretend it will go away on its own. The age of social media and an activist press makes that only truer," unquote. So I certainly subscribe to what the General was saying there. And I'm here today basically to fight the false narratives about natural gas, about manufacturing, and about the true doers of this great region, many of who are in the room here today. And I humbly assert that I should have some standing to make the case today, not just because I work in these industries, but maybe more importantly because I'm from here. So my family, it's been Italy and Pittsburgh ever since. My grandfathers and my dad, they worked in the steel mills and on the railroads. And I've lived my entire life within a 5-mile radius, bounded by Mount Washington right across the river here and the South Hills of Pittsburgh. So I can't see myself moving to Florida on a golf course, or Vail on some ski slope, or into a $1 million glorified closet in Manhattan. I don't golf, you can tell from my pasty complexion, I don't tan all that well. I can see, but I can't stop and turn. That's a problem, a series of problems. And for me, the best part of a trip to New York City, honestly, is when the wheels are lifting up from the runway to LaGuardia and you're on your way home. So I'm all in when it comes to Western PA, February weather and all. And it's not my nature to be standing here either. I'm an introvert. I, like many out there in the room today and within the doer community, we've historically subscribed to what I call political quietism. When we're attacked or when unethical or slandering us, what do? We typically keep our heads down, we bite our tongue, and we keep going to work. We've got thick skins because we function in the real world. So I assure you that I'm not here today because of a bruised ego. But political quietism and fence sitting, they can quickly mutate to enabling and appeasement. And there's implications with that are much worse than hurt feelings. So in the short term, you may avoid scrutiny and attack, but in the long term, you're going to be cooked. Because you can be certain that political quietism is fatal when applied as a defense against today's aggression on the left. And doing so only results in you being next. It doesn't avoid your demise. It only slightly delays it while making it more certain as the enemy is strengthening. And I'm using the term left here very specifically. That is not the same as liberal or Democrat. In fact, it couldn't be more different. A true liberal supports individual rights. And there are Democrats out there who are huge supporters of our region. True liberals and such Democrats should be celebrated. Now I'm talking and taking exception to an extremist, a different animal altogether. Someone who's anti-capitalist, anti-middle class, anti-individual, and frankly, anti-American. And we know what I said about political quietism, unfortunately, is true because history is littered with its abject failures. If you think about Neville Chamberlain managing Germany in the 1930s, hey, let's let them take Czechoslovakia and I'm sure they'll stop there. How did that appeasement turn out? A modern variation of Chamberlain and Germany is Pakistan and terrorism. Pakistan suffered greatly under terrorism, yet its leaders, they made a fateful decision to provide the terrorists refuge, I guess hoping that they could control and appease them. That was a big mistake, and today that country is in a more perilous position because of it. How about an example today with the tech industry and appeasement? Tech has spent years supporting and wrapping themselves around a spectrum of causes, frankly, have been hostile to free enterprise. And that strengthened and emboldened the hostile as they bled and fed off of the other doers, although they were feeding off of doers outside of tech. And I guess the tech industry figured this would help it avoid attack from the techno-bureaucrat or from the academic ideologue or from certain segments of the media. It's been wrong on all counts. So today, the techno-bureaucrat, they're going after tech under antitrust. The law firm is filing class action suit after class action suit. And the ivory towers in academia, they are bemoaning the evils of tech and how it needs to be controlled. And the media, or at least certain segments of the media, they're taking gratuitous shots any chance they get. So the guns have been turned on the Amazons and the Googles and the Facebooks and the Apples. And over the long haul, tech is going to lose, which means we're all going to lose due to tech's massive contributions to our society if we're not successful in changing things and turning things around. So let's disown political quietism and appeasement and fence-sitting when it comes to defending capitalism, defending free enterprise, defending the middle class, and defending the doers who create, enable, and serve all of these things, and of course, defending our great region. So I've got two topics to cover today. Okay, the first one is the current state of the natural gas industry is what monumental, epic success looks like. So what is the current state of the natural gas industry? Well, it looks pretty bleak. Winter prices are under $2. The forward price strip for this year and next is low. That indicates a lower for longer price regime. Storage levels are almost full. Supply is at historic highs. And many companies, their balance sheets and their cash flow statements as a result, they're under stress, they're under duress. And strangely enough, that's exactly what we all hoped for 15 years ago when the Marcellus first developed. Albeit I will admit we should have filed that outcome under the adage of be careful what you ask for. That's because all those metrics that I just ran through, they are the results of and they are the symptoms of technological innovation and breakthroughs. Disruptive technologies, they've got a history of seismically shifting, not just the different areas and industries where the disruption occurred, but also the global macro. So the haters that are looking to throw shade on the natural gas industry, you'll hear them label it as old economy. The reality is that the shale revolution through horizontal drilling and completions technology, it's disruptive technology in action. And the facts speak. Not since Jonas Salk and the polio vaccine has this region delivered as positive of a step change to society as it has with natural gas. And that's with all due respect to the meds and the eds and all the other wonderful segments of our regional economy. Consider the reality. Natural gas today, it's prolific, it's repeatable, and it's economic. So remember not long ago when all those self-described experts called the industry a flash in the pan and a bust, and how production was going to be unsustainable, we couldn't keep production going. Where are those experts at today? Because again, first, the natural gas industry is prolific. Recoverable reserves from the Marcellus, they've exponentially increased by over 3,000% in 10 short years. In the Utica horizon below the Marcellus, it represents a 24 trillion cubic feet additional opportunity. You take the Marcellus and the Utica together, across Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, that represents the second largest gas field in the world. The region's natural gas industry, secondly, is repeatable. Thousands of wells have been drilled, decades of future drilling locations remain. And better yet, the productivity of those wells, it's grown fantastically as the innovation and continuous improvement from drilling and completions and data analysis and computer modeling, they keep getting better and better. Recoverable reserves per well are over 1,000% higher today than they were 10 years ago. And then last but not least, third, the region's natural gas industry, it is indeed economic. Not only are we one of the largest gas reserves in the world, we're also one of the lowest costs. And a commodity business, you know this, that is crucial. Low-cost basin wins the day. Low-cost basin owns the future. Ladies and gentlemen, that's sitting right below our feet. So when you're producing widgets at a prolific, repeatable, and economic pace, guess what? Supply of that widget increases at a cheaper and cheaper cost. And that's exactly what's happening today with the widget constructed of a carbon atom connected to 4 hydrogen atoms, aka methane or natural gas. And the efficiencies of this disruptive technology, they've unleashed massive new supply at low cost. And in the short term, even though the demand for natural gas is growing, it can't keep pace with the supply growth, so the price plummets. That creates pain for the very companies and the industry that innovated the disruptive technology. Margins shrink, cash flows decline, layoffs ensue, stock prices drop. Today it hurts. Today it stinks. Today it's painful. But we should all remind ourselves it's the hallmarks of epic success. Now, while my industry is going through all that short-term current pain of success, everyone else is benefiting, much to the chagrin of the haters. The locals in our region are winning. School district budgets are getting relief from energy bills. Drivers pay less for gas. That helps consumer demand. Manufacturing facilities, and I'm talking about Edgar Thompson and Braddock, two startups in South Point, they're seeing profit margins grow as one of their key cost areas are being reduced. The building trades are booming, and they're reviving the middle class. Thank God for that. New industries are being born that are being built by the building trades, like the petrochemical industry starting out in Beaver County. Household budgets are getting relief, another stimulant for consumer demand. And local air quality is improving as clean burning natural gas takes over the power grid. The nation's winning. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but OPEC, their back is now broken. The United States is the energy superpower of the world and a net energy exporter. That helps our balance of trade, that helps our trade deficit. Our enemies, whether it's Russia, who's hurting, or Iran and Venezuela, who are on their knees because of what we're doing with respect to energy, and no more endless wars for energy security. And now that we're building these massive liquefied natural gas or LNG facilities on our coast to be able to export our natural gas, the world is winning. Access to energy in the developing world is going up because of this. That's lowering infant mortality rate. The cost of energy globally is plummeting. That drives longer life expectancies, particularly for the poor. Poland and Western Europe no longer held hostage by Russian energy brinkmanship. And the global economy comes away with a reduced carbon intensity as natural gas plays the leading role for global power generation. And the best news, in the long term, all of these short-term benefits, they start to grow permanent demand for natural gas. That demand growth, it slowly balances with the supply of natural gas. That creates reasonable price regimes. Price levels where the substantive benefits that I just articulated, they remain, and where the innovators that deliver the supply, they become healthy and profitable. It's happening, and it's inevitable. That's why the Shale cracker facility in Beaver County, that's only the first. There's going to be 2 to 3 more in this region in the coming years. The same is true for our power grid as it continues to evolve into natural gas fire. And it's also true for the transportation fleet as we evolve to electric and compressed natural gas or CNG vehicles, both of them, of course, largely fueled by natural gas. Now, none of what I've summarized, as big of a surprise it might be to those inside our industry, should surprise those in the audience outside of the energy space, because you have seen this dynamic virtuous cycle time and time again. You saw it with microchips, you saw it with software, you see it with cell phones to smartphones, ride hailing, you've seen it with ETFs in the financial arena, digital media. There's plenty of exemplars that you can look to. But where these other examples not only lowered costs for all, they also eliminated other competition. So you see the disruption in the short term, it was to the innovators, but in the long term, the more impactful disruption, it was to the established or entrenched competition. So just like the horse and buggy fell to the automobile, today's taxis and newspapers, they are succumbing to the superior ride-hailing and digital media technologies. Natural gas and the shale revolution, if allowed to achieve, will do exactly the same thing to competition like renewables. Many of you may not realize this, but if Pennsylvania were a standalone developed nation of its own, it would be the only nation well on its way to meeting the Paris Climate Accord targets. Now, why was that? It wasn't because of renewables or all the subsidy that would shower on them. Instead, it was because of the inevitable switch to natural gas on the power grid. The disruptive technology, it's decarbonized Pennsylvania, and the extreme fringe of the environmental movement, frankly, hates that. I'm sorry to report that renewables, they may have been rendered obsolete before they even had a chance because of what's going on with the shale revolution. Now, this story that's happening right here at ground zero, it should be the stuff that books, movies, prizes, and legend are made of. You're benefiting the middle class, you're improving human health, you're cleaning the air, rescuing the poor, you're unleashing individual rights and freedom across the globe. This is the most impactful things that one can think of. Yet natural gas and manufacturing, they get demonized and ridiculed on a consistent and regular basis by a cabal of misguided, insulated elites. And that brings me to the second subject of the talk today. And the subject's a simple one. The common thread tying the issues I'm going to cover in the next couple of minutes is one of gross inconsistency. That is applying one standard to, say, natural gas or manufacturing, and then completely ignoring that standard when it comes to a favored cause or a favored stakeholder. Now, someone around here, a great football coaching philosopher, likes to say, the standard is the standard. What's good for the goose should be good for the gander. And if it's not good for both, then the standard that you're superimposing on a disfavor, it's biased and discriminatory. So the principle of the standard being the standard, let's proceed. I want to start with Mayor Peduto. That's a guy who I like personally, but I could not disagree with more on policy. No city on earth sits atop more of this type of energy than Pittsburgh. And the mayor of the city, he wants to ban it to polish his environmental profile. Now the standard justifying the extremist position is a contrived list of future supposed harms, none of which can be demonstrated today. He'll go to an extreme to tarnish a once-in-a-generation opportunity, including using the next generation, high school kids, as props for the cameras when signing permission slips to allow them to skip school for a climate strike. Yet you're not going to find the mayor losing sleep when that enabling behavior provides one less day of education for those same kids who have to endure a Pittsburgh public school system that's producing 19.5% math proficiency and 42% English proficiency for 8th graders. That's a genuine, real, and current education crisis with our kids, taking a backseat to the vanity of the international photo op. So Mayor, the standard is the standard. If you want to focus on a real, current, and tangible crisis, let's solve together the reading and math proficiency scores of these kids. Stop placing your personal image outside of this region ahead of our kids' futures within the region. As to natural gas, there's no need to fabricate false and mysterious fears that are going to mystically manifest in the coming years. Pennsylvania natural gas, it's decarbonizing the atmosphere and clearing the air. Those problems are already well on the way of being solved. We also need to talk about academia, because within the ivory towers, or certain ivory towers, not Slippery Rock University, the standard never seems to be the standard. So let's consider one of our local esteemed academic institutions right down the road, Carnegie Mellon. Faculty there published research that implied natural gas development in Pennsylvania, it's hurting human health, and it's a net economic loser. The university also keeps talking about a carbon-free economy and a net negative carbon footprint. Carnegie Mellon is complicit in the standard not being the standard. First, that zero carbon newfangled thing. Carnegie Mellon, please explain how you function in a carbon-free economy and not violate the laws of thermodynamics, where energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Because for centuries, the standard that's governed the real world has been the laws of thermodynamics. How do you mine the materials needed to make your windmills and solar panels? How do you transport them? How do you deploy these so-called renewables? And when you think about it, there's really nothing renewable about them at a scale to match the current power generation fleet. And how do you deal with not so sunny Oakland 3/4 of the year? Or what do you do in January when it's 0 degrees and the wind isn't blowing? How does the economy function when energy costs skyrocket exponentially because of these fool's errands? A zero carbon economy is an impossibility. And if anyone down at Carnegie Mellon needs to figure out why, I direct them to their own science and engineering library. The standard demands it all gets done on the back of carbon. Maybe also you could talk to a mentor of mine that I had back in 1990 at Carnegie Mellon. He used to tell me the only form of energy that doesn't have an impact on the environment is the form of energy that you don't use. Second, on Carnegie Mellon's research, finding natural gas is harmful to health and an economic loser. What types of standards do we apply when assessing health and economic prosperity? The ones I hear coming from academic quads are ones that are looking to carbon intensity, to middle-class job demand, mortality rates from natural hazards, and famine deaths. So applying those standards, I have some questions for those researchers. Why is it that the United States is already decarbonized as we use more natural gas if it's so harmful? Why are the regional building trades union halls booming and alive and prospering if natural gas is such an economic loser? Why have global mortality and economic loss from natural hazards experienced by the average human being fallen by a factor of 5 since 1980 if carbon is evil? And how come global famine deaths per capita have plummeted precipitously as CO2 concentration has increased if carbon is the death of us all? Can we get a few of those PhDs on this puzzle, or these puzzles, so that we can make the standard be the standard? Now there's a gaggle of people, gaggle is a number, a few, of people making investment decisions, and here I'm talking about city public pension managers, a few local foundations with endowments, and a few regional university endowments, again not Slippery Rock, that really struggle with the standard being the standard. You see, on one hand, they have or are considering purging their portfolios of fossil fuel investments. Supposedly, again, because that simple yet powerful molecule, a carbon atom attached to 4 hydrogen atoms, it poses a future evil threat. Now, as these people get caught up in this carbon-shaming mob mentality, they can't stay principled on the most blatant and obvious issues. That's because while they vilify in the name of tomorrow's climate, they're shamelessly investing into entities enabling oppression and creating risk to us today. What am I talking about? Scores of publicly traded tech companies, including the one in Bakery Square, Google, as well as hundreds of private tech companies, they're building substantial pieces of their business models on aiding and abetting China to oppress and intimidate across the globe. So these tech firms are willfully transferring technology and capital to an oppressive communist regime, and they're using both of those things to militarize the South China Sea, imprison billions of Muslims, build state-of-the-art missile systems that are aimed at us, and persecute Hong Kong democracy advocates. And these public pension fund managers, these select foundations, and these university endowment managers, they're gleefully investing dollar after dollar into the companies making this possible. So designating China enablers as worthy and our homegrown energy and manufacturing industries as unworthy, ladies and gentlemen, that is insulting. Let's challenge these entities to put their money where their mouth is and divest immediately of any tech company holdings that enable China's state aggression, or alternatively stop the fossil fuel divestment nonsense. Either way, the standard must be the standard. Now let's see how what was once the protector of our democracy, and I believe will continue to be if we stay focused on this important issue, the press or the media, fares under the standard being the standard. The short answer is, depending on where you look, not so good. Look, I was a paper boy for years. I learned much about the world reading the paper from front to back every day before I delivered it. A properly functioning press, it's essential to a properly functioning free society. But comparing what certain segments of that profession has become versus what it was will make you disturbed, to say the least. There are once great local periodicals that today they read like tabloids. And portions of the so-called press today are for hire mercenaries bent on fabricating false narratives instead of reporting the news. And some of those media mercenaries, frankly, they despise our region, they hate our values, and they look down on the working man and the doers. And you can see this hypocrisy in action when comparing this fringe of the local media's treatment of the natural gas and manufacturing industries to the treatment of true environmental crises that are gripping our region. So consider how certain so-called local journalists report on the natural gas industry. They promote a disgusting falsehood of the industry causing childhood cancers, and no one is disturbed that there is zero evidence of such a thing. And when public officials can't find evidence of it, that subset of the media, they construct stories to make it sound like the lack of evidence is only a result of ineptitude or cover-up. Today, you've got some local media that use paid-for and non-peer-reviewed research to justify linking natural gas or manufacturing to harm and health. If Exxon used bought research to show the health benefits of fossil fuels, the same journalists would throw a fit. The standard doesn't seem to be the standard. And a component of local media amplifies and promotes environmental extremist groups who call for a petrochemical moratorium in Western Pennsylvania. These outlets are echoing that Chemical Valley taunt that's thrown at that noble industry. Some journalists have made their minds up that petrochemicals are not worthy, because of a standard that some future unproven harm is going to accrue if we build these magnificent facilities. But the goalposts, they move with these same journalists when dealing with a favored industry or a favored company. Consider Uber as a case in point. You won't find these journalists calling for ride-hailing's ouster from the region, despite Uber having to deal with current tangible harms associated with its business model. Dozens of fatalities and thousands of alleged sexual assaults. Now, don't mistake this as an attack on Uber. I'm a fan, use it regularly, very happy that they are in Pittsburgh. And yes, of course, Uber needs to do better on these unacceptable challenges. I'm sure they'd be the first to admit that. But the world is a highly imperfect place. And imposing standards of perfection for baseless future harm on the unworthy petrochemical industry, while giving a pass to current harm on the worthy ride-hailing industry, that's that segment of the media's unwillingness to have the standard be the standard. Then there's the most worrisome example, at least from my perspective of all, with this segment of media, a pair of true health and environmental crises that grip this great region. I'm talking about billions of gallons of raw sewage in Pittsburgh's waterways and toxic levels of lead in its drinking water. We've been in violation of clean water standards for years on sewage emissions, and the city has lead levels far, far above what the World Health Organization considers safe. These are current, tangible, and real harms to our quality of life. People and kids, they are getting sick because of these crises, and that's happening today. These crises have been avoided, ignored, and suppressed far too long by segments of the local media. And that's because the accountability for these water crises falls into the lap of favored politicians and bureaucracies. Fixes are readily available. This isn't rocket science. Many cities have solved the same damn problem because they had the will to do it. But solving these water problems, it's going to be forever delayed if unethical journalists continue to ignore and cover up inconvenient reality. In this situation, the standard not being a standard, it's harming our loved ones every day. I hope that you're as outraged by this as I am. And before I forget, I have to mention all the Davos CEOs out there. If you had your company sign a pledge to the Paris Climate Accord commitments, and then you were on CNBC lecturing to all of us about it at Davos, please, 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 do not let us see you flying on a private jet to and from exotic locales. Do what we all do, fly commercial, better yet, fly coach. Don't have the arrogance to give us something about purchasing CO2 offsets that you bought for the jet's carbon footprint or some such nonsense. And don't blame security concerns for flying private. Either drop the private jet or fess up to your pledge being nothing more than PRBS. We'll respect you more under either scenario, because then the standard would be the standard. You've all been very patient and kind. I thank you for that. I'm going to conclude with Aristotle. That is someone who my elite friends from the east side of town assured me was a really smart guy. And Aristotle, he spoke of two kinds of happiness. The first kind of happiness is having a good time. We call it hedonistic happiness. But that's hollow, that can be fleeting, and it really can't sustain the human spirit over the long haul. Second type of happiness, much more important. That is feeling purpose and fulfillment. That's the stuff that drive human beings to achieve. And this is what the enemy is looking to debase. Taking noble and impactful industries like energy and manufacturing and slandering them as harmful, old, or dare I say deplorable. Our jobs are to restore the reputations of these industries, of capitalism, and of free enterprise as noble, impactful endeavors that we're all proud to be part of. Ladies and gentlemen, capitalism isn't dead, it's not broken, it's thriving. Natural gas isn't the problem, it's the answer. Manufacturing is not over, it has arisen. The working man in the middle class is not deplorable, he is the standard by which we should measure our success by. The workers in these noble industries, they have purpose, they are not victims. The dream isn't dead, it's just beginning. Thank you very much.